Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove, and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, I feel my shoulders more than my chest on every pressing movement that I do in the gym. What am I doing wrong? It's always more difficult to establish a mind to muscle connection with pectoralis major than it is with your anterior deltoid. I believe the reason for that for a lot of people is a lack of mobility and flexibility in the pecs and overuse of the external rotator cuffs as well as the anterior deltoids, medial deltoids, and posterior deltoids. In English, we tend to overuse our shoulders more than our chest throughout the day-to-day lives that we're doing. So they kind of overcompensate for a lot of the movements. Okay, so whenever I see a lot of people, especially beginners, when they do bench press, for example, they lack that range of motion. If they're doing like a barbell bench press, they can't get the bar all the way down to their chest because they're not flexible enough. It's not necessarily a strength issue, it's more of a mobility and a flexibility issue. So then when they press up on any range of motion they are getting, they're using primarily their anterior deltoids. Okay. So my recommendation for this is to start doing your presses on a low incline. When you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to be forced to retract your shoulders into that bench a little bit more, which you should already be doing if you're doing any chest movement, okay? So that goes without saying, but you really should be focusing on when you're doing whether dumbbell presses or barbell presses, or if you're doing hammer strength machine presses, really focus on retracting your shoulders into the bench so you can really elevate pectoralis major and also stimulate pectoralis minor because you're going to use pectoralis minor to some degree on any pressing movement you do. Okay. Another thing you want to focus on doing too, if you're doing barbell presses, go a little bit more narrow. Okay, I see too many people in the gym going too wide on a barbell bench press. When you go too wide, you're going to be using more delts. You want to bring it in a little bit. I'm not recommending you do a close grip bench press. I'm just saying bring it in about slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and you're really going to hit the pecs. You see when I go more narrow there, even though I'm wearing two shirts right now, you can see it's more pecs. If I go wider, it's more delts. So if you're doing dumbbells, good rule of thumb, keep the dumbbells close to the sides of the chest. So I always tell this to clients, okay, so when you're doing, let's say, an incline dumbbell bench press, you want to make sure when those dumbbells come down, they're close to the sides of the pecs. They're not way out here, okay? You want to keep them in tight. If you keep them in tight, you're going to keep constant tension on pec major, okay? And that's the muscle that you're working when you're doing pressing movements. The secondary muscle, of course, is going to be your triceps. And you are going to use your anterior deltoids to some degree because you are pushing. But to go back to my low incline, I find that works exceptionally well. I have the luxury of working at a private gym. So what I'll typically do is I'll just take a retractable bench, put it on its lowest incline, set myself up in the squat rack, and I'll do just a barbell bench press in there. And then I'll do a flat barbell bench press. I know a lot of commercial gyms, they already have incline benches that are already in a fixed position, so you can't really change that. And I don't like that because most incline for barbell presses, in my opinion, are too high, and you are going to work more shoulders. So going on a lower incline, you're going to get a better contraction in your pecs. If you head to my Instagram, you'll see I've got some videos up of myself doing chest workouts, and you'll see it's one of the first exercises I post during my chest days is that low incline barbell press. I feel it's a really effective exercise. And when I'm doing dumbbells, I go a little bit higher, but I still make sure I'm keeping those dumbbells close to my chest. So, good rule of thumb, just remember when you're training chest, try to bring your arms in a little bit more narrow. Okay, when you're doing barbell work, bring the dumbbells in a little bit closer to the midline of the body when you're doing dumbbell work. Make sure you're focusing on retracting your shoulders, pushing your chest up. I always use the analogy for clients, pretend like your chest is a loaf of bread in the oven, make it rise. So push it out, you're going to use it more. Excuse me. So that's what I'd recommend. Okay. And also work on your mobility and flexibility because, like I said, In my opinion, that's the reason why a lot of people are unable to contract their pecs properly, okay? Because they don't have that mobility and flexibility that's necessary to utilize full range of motion. All right. Okay. Nick, why do my arms look the same size even though I train them twice a week? Stop training them twice a week. You're overtraining them. Your arms are going to get hit when you train back, when you train chest, when you train shoulders. Okay. Any pressing movement that you do, whether it's for chest, you're doing a barbell press, whether it's for shoulders, you're doing a dumbbell press, you are going to use your triceps as your synergist muscle group. So they're going to be worked, okay, indirectly, but they still are being worked. Any back exercise you do, seated row, lat pull down, bent over barbell row, T-bar row, doesn't matter. You are going to use your biceps to some degree. They are your synergist muscle. This is why I don't recommend people train biceps with back and triceps with chest. Okay, I recommend giving arms their own day. So if you're not doing that already, that's what you need to start doing right away. Give arms their own day. Another thing you want to focus on too is you want to focus on the mass builders. Okay. I myself have been guilty of this. And it wasn't until this past weekend when I actually got called out for my triceps from one of the judges. They said, your triceps need to be bigger. And I'm like, you know what? She's right. My triceps do need to be bigger. And the reason my triceps are not bigger is because as I've gotten older, I've become a little bit lazy on some exercises and I'm not doing as much free weights for my triceps. I'm doing more cable work. And I'm like, I got away from the basics. So in my case, I'm like, I need to get back to doing a closed grip bench press. Those worked really well for me. I need to get back to doing bent over dumbbell kickbacks. Those also worked really well for me. So you want to focus on the mass builders, okay? Skull crushers, I still do those, but that's another one, good one too, right? So when you're working your triceps, you really want to focus on those free weight movements besides the cables. 'Cause I think a lot of people get comfortable with the cable work, and myself, I'm guilty of that myself. Same thing with the biceps. You want to make sure you're sticking with your dumbbell curls, your barbell curls, your easy bar curls. In my opinion, free weights will always build more mass than machines and cables. So I don't work with you, so I don't know what your arm workout looks like. However, if I were training you, right away I get you doing minimum three exercises for your triceps, minimum three exercises for your biceps, and I'd have you do it once a week. That's it. Not twice a week, just once a week. You do 12 sets for your triceps, 12 sets for your biceps. That's it. If you're more advanced in your training, so you've been training for a few years, we could bring up that up to like 4 or 5 exercises for your triceps, 4 or 5 exercises for your biceps. But the staples should include close grip bench press. If you're able to do dips and you don't have any problems with your shoulders, dips are a great exercise. I myself can't do dips anymore, but I really found they worked well when I was able to do them. Okay. Skull crushers. I like to do my skull crushers on a high incline bench. I find it's a really good way to isolate the back head of the tricep. Dumbbell kickbacks. That's another great exercise. And then you can do some rope cable extensions and straight bar cable extensions, V bar cable extensions, just as a finishing movement, okay? Just to bring in more definition. But you remember, if you want to add size to the triceps, you have to stick to your compound freeway movements. And with your biceps, I talked about this last week, how the biceps are actually the smaller portion of the arm. So you're making a mistake if you're training your biceps more than your triceps. You should train them evenly, but a lot of people, especially men, tend to focus more on the biceps than the triceps. But when you are training your biceps, stick to your compounds. So easy bar curls, that's a great exercise for the peak. The barbell curls, that's a great exercise for the length, right? So they're not the same exercise, even though they're both bars, different exercises. And of course, you want to do dumbbell curls. That's a staple. Whether you're doing them seated or standing, you want to make sure that you are doing dumbbell curls because you're working each arm indirectly. And as another exercise you could throw in are maybe some standing cable curls and maybe some standing hammer cable curls. Okay. So I always recommend getting at least 3 free weight exercises for your biceps and 3 free weight exercises for your triceps if you want to really make them grow, and don't overtrain them. All right. They're already being stimulated on chest day, back day, and shoulder day. You don't need to work them more than once a week if you're working them properly. Okay. Okay. Nick, is it better to go super heavy with sloppy form or lighter with perfect form for growth? So, a lot of people are just going to assume I'm going to tell you to use perfect form at all times. But as someone who doesn't use perfect form at all times, and as someone who sometimes my reps do get a little sloppy, I can tell you now, you're still going to grow. Okay. But I always tell clients, you want to make sure that if you're going to have any sloppy reps, they happen at the end. Okay. And what I mean by sloppy reps, let's say I'm doing a standing barbell curl and I'm trying to get 10 reps and I'm on my last set and I'm getting to rep 9 and barely getting that out there. And I'm going for rep 10 and maybe I use a little bit of a swing with my hip abductors. I'm okay with that. And I'm okay if a client does that. I call it a cheat curl. As long as they're not swinging from rep 1, we're fine. If they're swinging from rep 1, yeah, the weight's too heavy. Okay. Now they're using ballistic form. They risk injuring themselves, tearing a bicep. Not a good idea. But if it's just like that last rep or maybe last 2 reps and you're just trying to force them out, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with a sloppy rep. But I know hearing that from a personal trainer and coach, be like, well, that's wrong advice. I'm like, no, it's not. Because if 90% of the set is perfect, you're still getting an A, right? As long, like I said, as long as you're not putting yourself at injury, like I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're squatting 315 or 425 or something. You're like, hey, I'm gonna go for one more sloppy rep and it looks like a good morning. That's not a good idea. But if you're doing exercises like I said, barbell curls, maybe you're doing like a tricep cable press down, you're starting to use a little bit of momentum. I think that's okay because you're still stimulating muscle growth. So are you working the muscle to 100%? Probably not because now you're starting to use momentum. Maybe you're incorporating other muscle groups, but you still are working that muscle. And even if you're only working that last rep of that muscle for maybe 50%, that's 50% more than if you were just to stop and say, well, no, that's textbook perfect form. Okay, so to me, there's a time and place for sloppy form. And in my opinion, it should be at the end of a set. And really, it should be maybe the last set of an exercise when you're doing your heaviest weight. But choose those exercises carefully. Because as I said, you don't want to be doing that on an exercise like a barbell squat or deadlift, right? Because you really could risk injury. But when you're doing isolation movement or movements that are going to more refine the muscle bellies or define the muscle bellies, not the mass builders, I'm okay with that. Okay. But, choose them wisely because again, last thing you want to be doing is bouncing a bar off your chest while doing a bench press, going for that last rep, and now you're stuck at the bottom. You try to do a press, tear your pec. Okay. So be smart. Obviously, pick and choose wisely. In my opinion, though, there's nothing wrong with sloppy reps. There is a time and place for them, and that time should be on the last 1 or 2 reps of the final set of the exercise you're doing. All right. Okay, Nick, my strength is going up, but my physique isn't changing much. What gives? Well, are you training for power? Or are you training for aesthetics? Because there's a difference. You're looking at a power lifter versus a bodybuilder, very different physiques. Power lifters are usually stronger, but they're not really aesthetically pleasing. They usually have guts, thick arms. I'm not downplaying their physiques. I'm just saying they're not. I've never looked at a power lifter's physique and go, wow, I want to have that physique because they just train for strength. Okay. So if you're someone who is training in the gym and you're doing that 3 reps to 6 reps, you are training for strength. You're not training for aesthetics. Okay. Are you going to put on muscle? Sure. But it's not going to be shapely muscle. It's not going to be defined and refined muscle. It's not going to be that solid, lean, dense muscle that we see on bodybuilders on stage, right? You're just going to have big muscle, blocky muscle, but strong muscle, right? Powerlifters are very strong, but strong does not equate to aesthetics. All right. Remember that because what is a bodybuilder's objective? A bodybuilder's objective is to sculpt the body. So whether you're a man or a woman, if you are going to the gym to transform your physique, you want to build up your shoulders. You want to build a bigger chest. You want to build a wider back. You want to build more defined glutes, hamstrings, quads. You are a bodybuilder. Okay. You do not need to step on stage to be defined as a bodybuilder. All right. Or labeled as a bodybuilder. Okay. You are going to the gym to build your body. So if you're going to do that, you have to have that mindset that it's not about the amount of weight you lift, it's how you lift it, where you lift it, as opposed to the sequences. Okay. So, or I should say, as opposed to how much you lift it and which exercises you choose because a lot of power lifters will stick with the compound lifts, the bench press, the squats, the deadlifts, right? The clean and press. Those are all great exercises, but they're more Olympic lifts, they're more power movements. I'm not saying don't do those, but you don't need to do them as heavy as a power lifter. In fact, I'd recommend you do them lighter and keep your rep range between 10 to 15. Because as I've always talked about, if your goal is to build an aesthetically pleasing physique, in my opinion, double digits work best. Okay. So you stick with that 10 to 15 rep range. Every once in a while, you want to drop it down to eight. Maybe you're doing a drop set. I see nothing wrong with that. But I find that works exceptionally well when you're trying to train for hypertrophy. Okay. Which is, again, refining and defining the muscle bellies. Okay. Sculpting the physique. So when you ask, why is your strength going up? Well, if you are just looking at the strength and you're like, yeah, now I'm bench pressing 315, but I still have a small little chest, what I would say is take 90 pounds off that. All right. Take 90 pounds off that. Now you're doing 225. But you know what? Now maybe slow down the reps. Maybe do some rest and pauses. Really try to focus on controlling the eccentric contraction and exploding up on the concentric contraction. I'm just using the bench press as an example. That right there will help bring out more striations and more definition in your chest because if you're doing a lighter weight that you can control, you're going to build muscle as opposed to just lifting a heavier weight that you're maybe getting 3 to 6 reps with, and maybe the last 1 or 2 reps is not the prettiest on every set. No, you're going to build strength, but you're not going to build that aesthetically pleasing physique. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, so you have to really look at yourself. Okay, what am I training for here? Strength or aesthetics? If you're a bodybuilder, you're training for aesthetics. There's nothing wrong with that, but train like a bodybuilder. Do not train like a powerlifter. All right. So keep your reps between 10 to 15. Make sure that you're keeping your rest periods between 45 seconds to 60 seconds max. Incorporate a lot of drop sets, supersets, giant sets, circuit training, and watch you will grow. I promise you, you will grow. Okay. As long as you're really focused in the gym and training with intelligence. All right. And not with ego. Okay. Okay, Nick, do I really need to track every calorie to build muscle, or can I just eat clean? Well, I don't track calories personally, but I do track macronutrients, and I have a general idea as to how many macros I'm consuming, whether I'm, trying to gain muscle or trying to lose body fat. So I have a general idea in my head because I've been doing this for so long. I don't need to go on ChatGPT or go on whatever these fancy apps people use, MyFitnessPal and everything to calculate my macros. I know what I'm consuming, but for a lot of people, they don't know, right? And I understand that. That's fine. You can use those apps. They are important to use, though, are important, I should say, to understand what you're consuming because eating clean does not necessarily equate to fat loss. I can tell you that right now because there's a lot of people who eat clean, and they do eat clean. I mean, for the most part. But if you're having, let's say, chicken and rice, for me, my standard meal of chicken and rice is 8 ounces of chicken breast with a cup of jasmine rice. That's me. Okay. Other people, I've seen their portions. They might do maybe 6 or 7 ounces of chicken breast. It's not the protein that they overeat, but the rice. I look at their plate and there's like 2 to 3 cups of rice on there. I'm like, oh my God, you know how much carbs is in that? Like you're going to go into a carb surplus there, 150 grams of carbs for one meal. You don't need that. So especially if you're someone who only works out 3 or 4 times a week, you don't need that. And especially if you're someone who sits at a desk for the majority of your day, you don't need that. So what's going to happen is those additional carbohydrates, those additional calories in your case, because you count calories, are going to be stored as body fat. All right. So you don't just want to look at the food and eat clean food. If you are serious about transforming your physique, a food scale is going to be your best friend. A measuring cup is going to be your best friend. All right. This is crucial. I talked about on a YouTube short earlier this week that I always use a food scale. All right. Even in my so-called off season, I always use a food scale because I'm terrible at eyeballing things. I still use measuring cups because again, I don't, I can't eyeball a cup of rice. I can't. I probably get pretty close, but close is not good because if I'm trying to consume, let's say, 6 cups of rice a day, especially right now in my rebound diet, if I'm consuming 9 cups of rice a day, well, that's going to put me in a caloric surplus. It's going to put me in a carb surplus, which is going to equate to fat gain. And so, even though I'm thinking I'm doing 6 cups, maybe I'm doing a cup and a half here. Maybe I'm doing a cup and a quarter here. Maybe I'm doing, almost 2 cups here. I don't know. So, if it's measured out, I know exactly how much I'm having. Now, I can monitor my physique and go, oh, I'm putting on weight, but you know what? I'm getting a little soft in my midsection. Let's scale it back a bit. Okay. Maybe I'll take that cup of rice down to half a cup of rice for each meal for the next week. All right. Now my body fat's going back down again. Perfect. Okay. Now we can start adding more, maybe add some more protein. And that's the idea of clients. When clients send me their progress photos, I can really look and go, okay, wow, okay, the weight is going down on the scale. Great. But I feel it's going down too fast, or maybe I feel like maybe they're on their bulking phase and they're trying to gain weight. And I'm like, you know what, the weight's going up too fast on the scale. Or sometimes the weight is not budging, but I can look at their photos and go, yeah, but your body composition is changing. So that's why I was talking about how the progress photos are so important, and it is the most important metric that I use when making changes to people's nutritional plans. Because I like to compare progress photos every 2 or 3 weeks apart. Okay. So if you send me your progress photos today, let's say I'm doing this weekly Q&A on a Friday, you send to me Friday morning, I'm not going to compare your progress photos that you sent me today with the ones you sent me last week. I'm going to compare them with the ones you sent me 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I can see visual changes. So that way, if the number on the scale is not budging, but I can see your body composition is changing, then I know where to make the changes. Okay. So to answer that question, I wouldn't just eat clean. Like I would recommend eating clean for most people, but I would strongly advise you to practice portion control. I talked about, in my opinion, the number one reason why people continuously gain weight, besides living a sedentary lifestyle, is because they don't practice portion control. All right. And that's huge, especially here in North America where our portions are ridiculously big. Okay. We don't need this much food. All right. Unless you are an off-season bodybuilder trying to win to Mr. Olympia, you do not need to be consuming 300 to 400 grams of protein per day. You do not need to be consuming 500 to 700 grams of carbohydrates per day. Okay. You do not need to be consuming 125 to 175 grams of fat per day. Not necessary. All right. Okay. Nick, why do my legs grow way slower than my upper body, even though I train them hard? Okay, well, you could be training your legs hard, but maybe genetically you don't have the best structure for your legs, your ham, glute, tie, and your quadriceps. That's very common. A lot of people don't. Believe it or not, and I know a lot of people might not believe this because some of them saw my photos online and think my legs are nuts. I didn't have good legs when I first started training. I worked for that. I had to figure out what worked for me. Okay, because there were years that I trained my legs and nothing worked. And I just had these little stick legs. But it wasn't until I started really focusing on barbell back squats with my shoes off. I'm just saying what worked for me. My quads started to pop. And I was always taught to squat toes forward, but I started to open up my stance into a V squat stance, and all of a sudden my quads ballooned out. Now, that might not be the conventional way to squat. However, it worked for my body type. And if you watch my videos I put up on Instagram of myself squatting, I don't do ass to grass squats. I don't. I go about 3/4 of the way down. That's it. It works for my body. Will that work for everyone's body? No, of course not. You have to find a formula that works for you and specifically for you. And that's why it does help sometimes to work with a coach, because a coach can assess your form, assess your physique, and just watch what's happening with your planes and ranges of motion. So, like for example, Dorian Yates, 6 times Mr. Olympia, didn't squat. Didn't do barbell squats. The best exercise, the king of all exercises, according to trainers of the world. Dorian Yates, 6 time Mr. Olympia. That's the best physique in the world for 6 years in a row. Never squatted. Didn't do any barbell squats. Earlier in his career, he did. He said he didn't find they actually worked for him. So he changed it up. He did leg press. He did hack squat. He did leg extensions. That worked for him. You can't argue. Go back, look at his photos. Crazy quads, crazy hamstrings, crazy glutes. I'm not going to sit there and tell Dorian Yates, oh, you should have squatted. No. So he found a formula that worked for his body type. So you have to find the formula that works for your body type. And if you're not well versed as far as exercise physiology and you don't really understand the body mechanics of how the quadriceps engage with the hamstrings and the glutes and the calves, you'd want to hire a personal trainer, whether in-house or online, that can teach you and help you put together a program that's going to help your body, and in your case, your lower body, develop more quickly. Okay. So don't give up. Don't become frustrated, but say, okay, well, whatever you're doing right now is not working. I'm not saying that you're not training hard, because you could be training really hard, but just because you're training hard does not necessarily mean you're going to get results. Okay. You probably have decent results. If you train every day, you go to the gym and you do work out, you're going to look pretty good. But I understand what you're saying with now you're trying to really refine the body more. Okay. And I'm like that too. But I'm also open to, if something's not working, I change it. Okay. And I know a lot of people don't like change, but you have to be honest with yourself. If you keep doing the same shit over and over again and it's not working, that is the definition of insanity. So don't be insane. Don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to listen to someone else who you respect and may have a different perspective and say, I'm watching how you squat, but I think you should do it like this. Or why don't we trade you the leg press for the hack squats? Or why don't we select your barbell back squats as the last exercise? We're going to do some pre-exhaust techniques, okay? So working with someone who has that experience can help guide you and troubleshoot what's not working and turn it to something that will work for your physique. All right. So that's my recommendation to you is either hire a coach or a trainer that can teach you different training methods, different training techniques. You might know all the exercises, but there's so many different angles that you can hit them. And working with a good coach can make a world of difference if you're trying to bring up a lagging body part. Okay. All right. Okay. A few more questions here. Nick, I always feel my lower back on leg day. Am I doing something wrong? Potentially, you could be doing a few things wrong. I mean, you could be engaging more of your spinal erectors than your glutes, hamstrings, quads. One thing I try to teach my clients, for example, when they're doing barbell back squats, I say, forget about your quads. I don't need you to focus on your quads. We're all quad dominant. We walk on our legs all day. That's all quads. So you don't need to focus on your quads when you're doing a squat. Okay. But what I do try to do is I try to get them to focus more on their glutes and their hamstrings. So when they're in a squat rack, the first thing I say to them is, I want your mind to muscle connection in your ass. Okay. Put your mind in your ass. Because as you push up on a squat, I want you to push all your weight back towards me if I'm standing behind them. Because that will tell me that they're engaging more glutes and more hamstrings and less spinal erectors. Okay. There's so many times I watch when people do squats or lunges and they pronate forward. They're putting all their weight forward. I'm like, oh my God. The pressure you're putting, never mind on your back, but also on your hip flexors and your patella and your meniscus, your knees, you're asking for trouble long term. So you always want to keep your weight back when you're doing leg exercises. Always. Okay. There's no reason to be forward when you're doing leg exercises. So try to focus on shifting your weight back. Even if that means you have to lighten the weight, lighten the damn weight. Who cares? You're going to get more out of the exercise. I promise you. All right. If you watch my squatting videos, you're never going to see me leaning forward. My weight, it almost looks like I'm going to fall back. That's how much pressure I'm putting backwards. But the reason I'm doing that is because I want to make sure, besides keeping my back safe, I want to make sure that I'm gauging the proper muscle bellies. Okay. So if you are experiencing back pain when you're training your legs, you might want to try to really focus on shifting the weight back and incorporating more glutes and more hamstrings. Another thing I'd strongly recommend, especially if you're someone who is lifting heavy on leg day, like say you are someone like me who is squatting 315 pounds. I mean, God, that's almost double my body weight now at this point. You want to invest in a weight belt. Okay. That is crucial. You could not pay me to squat without a weight belt. All right. Especially after I had my hernia. Oh my God. So when I was told I'd never squat again, if I'm going to squat again, I'm going to wear that weight belt. Okay. I don't care if I'm squatting 45 pounds aside, I'm going to wear that weight belt. All right. Because that's just going to help give you that extra security in the L4, L5 region, the lower back. Okay. So invest in a weight belt if you're not already using one. Really try to focus on shifting your weight backwards. And again, try to have that strong mind to muscle connection with your hamstrings and glutes. And forget about your quads, they're going to contract. Whatever exercise you do in the gym for legs, leg extensions, hack squats, leg press, barbell back squats, your quads are going to contract. Okay. You're going to feel your quads. You don't need to go, oh, where am I going to feel this? You know, that's like when you train your biceps and you do a curl. You don't need to have a mind to muscle connection. You know, you're working your biceps. Certain muscles are a little bit harder to engage and create that mind to muscle connection with. Hamstrings and glutes, the lats, the ones you can't see, unfortunately, are the ones that are harder to get that mind to muscle connection. The only way to build that mind to muscle connection is years and years of training. You have to go through the movements over and over and over again. And then, boom, it becomes like second nature. Okay. So lighten the load and try to focus on that mind to muscle connection, and that should help. Okay. We got two more questions here. Okay. Nick, what's the biggest mistake people make when trying to bulk? I had a similar question to this a few weeks ago in the Q&A, so I'll keep this one quick. Um, when it comes to bulking, two things: uncontrolled bulking and not practicing portion control. I know you think, well, that's the same thing. It's not, because uncontrolled bulking means that, you know what, those extra calories, I need them, so I will have that slice of cake, or I will have that bag of potato chips because yeah, I'm bulking, right? That's a mindset that a lot of people have when they are so-called bulking. All right. That's why I don't really like to use that term bulking, because whenever I think of the term bulk, I just think kind of fat and thick and no definition. I've never liked that look. So I don't like that word bulk, okay? I prefer the word lean gaining. Okay, lean gaining. So I'm going to eat whole nutritious foods to help support the effort and energy that I'm putting into my workouts. I'm fueling my body for performance in the gym. So I need good, high quality food. Do I need a lot of it? Not crazy amounts, but I do need enough to make sure that I'm replenishing my glycogen storages in the gym. Okay, so that is important for sure. Okay, portion control. I touched on that earlier. That's another one. So many people I know that bulk, they don't use a food scale. Technically, I guess you could say I'm bulking now because my show is over and now I'm doing a rebound diet, so I'm eating more food. But I'm still using my food scale. I'm still measuring out my oats. I'm still weighing my goddamn peanut butter. I just started weighing my peanut butter for this last show. I never weighed my peanut butter in my entire life. I used to just kind of eyeball it with a tablespoon, but I was measuring with love and not my brain. So now I weigh my peanut butter. And yeah, when I'm doing this Q&A right now, I'm like 6 days post show, I'm still weighing out my peanut butter because I don't want to get sloppy. So I'm practicing portion control. And a good rule of thumb I've used whenever I'm trying to put on size is I stick to my six, or in my case, 7 meals per day. If I'm still hungry at the end of the day, I will allow myself something, but it'll be something from my plan. So it might be more protein powder, maybe I'll do a protein shake. It might be a little bit more peanut butter, it might be a little bit more rice, it might be a little bit more chicken, but it's something from my plan. It's not, well, I'm still hungry, so I'm going to order a pizza. No, okay, that's uncontrolled bulking. So you want to make sure that you are controlling your lean gaining diet plan. You're doing everything with strategy. You can still have a cheat meal, but my recommendation is keep it one cheat meal a week if you are going to cheat. 95% of your food should be clean because you are trying to put on clean quality muscle. You can't fill your body with potato chips and Krispy Kremers and pizza and go to the gym and think that you're going to perform well. You're going to perform like shit. Maybe the first 20 minutes you'll be strong, but that's going to end very quickly because your blood sugar levels are going to drop, your insulin levels are going to spike, you're going to start to feel nauseous, tired, and going to sweat profusely, and you're going to want to go home. So eat correctly. Complex carbohydrates, healthy fats, lean proteins. Monitor the mirror every once in a while. Take a look at the scale, as long as the scale doesn't play head games with you. And if you're starting to go up too fast, you know to start scaling things back. If you're practicing portion control, you'll know exactly where to scale things back. There'll be no guessing games. So, in my opinion, those are the two biggest mistakes people make when they're trying to put on size: uncontrolled eating and not practicing proper portion control, which again, they're different. All right, last one. Nick, if you had to pick just 5 exercises for building an overall aesthetically pleasing physique, what would they be? So I'd have to pick 5 compound movements, okay? Because if I'm only allowed to do 5 exercises, I'm thinking, okay, what's going to give me the most bang for my buck? I want to make sure I'm doing something for my chest. I want to make sure I'm doing something for my back. I want to make sure I'm doing something for my legs. I want to make sure I'm doing something for my shoulders. And I want to make sure I'm doing something for my arms. So that doesn't give me much, right? So I've got to really be strategic here. So if I was going to go for my chest, to this day, I'm a firm believer. When I answer that first question, the low incline barbell bench press, that is the king of all chest exercises. I attribute a lot of my chest development to that exercise. And oddly enough, it's an exercise I only started doing probably about 7 or 8 years ago. But once I started doing it, my chest started to really pop. So the low incline barbell press for chest, to me, that's essential. If I could only pick one back exercise, because there's a few that I think are necessary, but if I could only pick one, it would be bent over barbell rows. Because when you're doing a bent over barbell row, you're working more than your back. You're stabilizing, you're working your spinal rectors, you're working your rhomboids, you're working your scapula. So again, it goes back to the more bang for your buck. So besides just working your lats, now you're also working those other muscle groups, right? So I'm kind of cheating here because that one exercise, I'm working multiple muscle groups. If I was going to do my shoulders, it'd have to be because I'm already doing a press, a low incline barbell press. I'm getting some work from my anterior delts. I'm not going to do that, but I would do some dumbbell lateral raises because then at least I can work my medial delt. Okay. So right now I've got the low incline barbell bench press for my upper pecs, bent over barbell row for my back, and then I'm looking at the medial deltoids lateral raises. As far as my legs are concerned, I'm going to say squats because for me, for my body, I found squats made all the difference. So I wouldn't take those out. Those would be the staple in my workout. But honorary mentions would go to walking lunges because I feel that walking lunges are just as effective as barbell squats. For me, anyway, they are. But I would take barbell back squats for sure because then I'm getting a little bit more activation in my hamstrings and glutes, whereas lunges I feel are more quad dominant overall. So I would take the squats over the lunges. And for arms, that's a tricky one because for me, I don't believe that you can just do one arm exercise. So I'm going to cheat here. And I'm going to say that I'm going to pick one bicep exercise and one tricep exercise. Bicep exercise I would take easy bar curls. Tricep exercise I would take easy bar skull crushers. Both free weights. You'll notice I know I cheated. Gave you six exercises, but like I said, I can't just work one area of the arms. I got to work the bicep and the tricep. I have to. I already feel guilty for not working the hamstrings with the quads, but like I said, barbell back squats, you can turn them into a hamstring exercise if done correctly. But notice the main thing about all six of those exercises, all free weights. No cables, no machines, no hammer strength machines, none of that stuff. All free weights, all compound movements. They're going to allow me to build muscle, quality, lean, dense muscle. And that's what I want. So those are the exercises that I would take. Anyway, what would you take? Put them in the comments. Let me know. That's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up. What is the date today? I think today is the Monday, April the 6th, because today's the 3rd. I'm filming this on Friday night. So this video will be going up on Monday, April the 6th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, your workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me on my Instagram at fitcosgrowth_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting and subscribing to my YouTube channel. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. And thank you for supporting my online coaching business as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I really do appreciate all the support and all the feedback, and I hope to continue to grow this channel. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.